welcome to another episode of the Top Attorneys of North America podcast. Today, we're taking you to the heart of Queens, New York, home to one of the most dedicated and community-driven attorneys in the city, John Ciafone. John practices in New York, New Jersey, and Washington, D.C. He isn't just a seasoned trial lawyer with more than 30 years of experience. He is also a lifelong Astoria resident and a tireless advocate for fairness and accessibility in the legal system. John, thank you for being on the show with us today.
Thank you, Sal. Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Excellent. Let's dive in. John, tell us a little bit about your background and what inspired you to become an attorney.
Very good. Well, I'm born and raised in Queens, literally born and raised in Astoria, and I continue to work here and live here. I have a family of a wife, a wonderful wife, and 4 incredible children, and I'm blessed. But mainly, I enjoy serving my local friends, community members in problems that they have, and ultimately in them getting the justice that they're looking for. And I try to do that. But what I do different than other attorneys is I'm honest with my clients. I tell them what their chances are because I believe that's the best way to deal with people. To be honest, whether you're a doctor, a lawyer, a judge, any other professional, you have to be honest and tell the truth. And that's why I think that I'm successful. I've been doing this a long time, over 30 years, and I have a great record, a lot of clients, a lot of referrals. I get a lot of referrals back from clients. They're very happy. In fact, I just got one back from one of my original clients. They came back to me, almost 30 years when I first represented them. So it says a lot in terms of how I practice and how I deal with people. I'm accessible at all times. I call people back because that's what they want. They want to be responded to. And beyond that, I do a lot of community service. I was president of Community School Board 30. I'm the executive leader of the Aldo's Democratic Club. And I'm a volunteer EMS, EMT, a paramedic trained person who was awarded the New York City Health and Hospital Award during COVID for my work that I did during COVID, my volunteer work that I did. So I'm proud of that. Also, I'm distinguishable from other attorneys who practice personal injury and medical malpractice in that I know medicine. I'm not an expert, but I've been trained in emergency medicine because of my training in EMS and paramedic programs. So I understand a lot about emergency medicine, and it gives me an advantage in dealing with cases, in getting the maximum recovery. I want to bring out a case I recently settled a few days ago. It was a low impact case. A car was rear-ended by a van, and there was basically no damage to the car that my clients were in. But one of my clients sustained a head injury, some bleeding in the brain, and the other one sustained a shoulder tear and a cervical injury that required a percutaneous microdiscectomy. That's a small incision in the neck. But we were offered $25,000 and $50,000 each for each of these 2 people. And I ultimately, at the picking a jury, we settled the case for $4.5 million. And it was, again, what distinguishes the case is that it's a low impact case, but with my experts, with my training in medicine, understanding traumatic brain injury. A lot of the lawyers don't understand the intricacies of traumatic brain injury cases. I was able to bring out the results of an accident with our experts, and we were able to get an astonishing settlement. Shocked everyone in the court, but we did it because we understand not only the rules of doing a trial, and that's another thing, a lot of the lawyers don't do trials, but understanding the medicine and using experts who can convince juries, convince judges, of the real implications of an accident and the injuries that are sustained. Even that when you're looking at a car and you're saying, well, there was not a lot of damage. You looked at this car in this accident, you would have said it probably wasn't even involved in an accident, but we had everything appropriate and everything was accurate, and we achieved an amazing outcome. And I think that's important. Again, getting the right attorney who knows not only how to try a case, because that's what we do. So every time I take a case, an accident case or a medical malpractice case, I get it ready for trial. In my mind, I say, well, let's get this ready, assuming we can't settle. Uh, I get it ready and we organize it for the purposes of trial. And that helps the client tremendously because we get the maximum result financially. That's really the only recovery someone can get in the civil arena, a financial award, and we're able to maximize that. And what does that do? That'll give us a ton of referrals. That'll give us enough business to continue, and that's how we continue in all the years that we've been doing this. So I'm proud of that. Proud of helping people. I'm proud of representing David versus the Goliath because in this particular case that I settled, I was up against six attorneys, two very good trial attorneys, but they saw what we did in terms of the work we made, the progress we made, and the length of time we put into the case, getting it to the point of proving a very serious injury to two plaintiffs, even though damages were very minimal to the vehicles with our experts, including a biomechanical construction engineer who could attest that the force from the van, the mechanical force, was enough to cause the injuries sustained by our plaintiffs, along with the physicians who could attest that those injuries were related to the accident and the collision that occurred with the van. So that's important. And that's the work that I've been doing continuously for the people in my community.
Yes, sir. It's obvious that all of the hats that you wear professionally and within the community is definitely a benefit to your clients. And you just alluded to David and Goliath, which I think is interesting because I know that you've indicated that you enjoy helping the underdog.
Yeah.
In your legal philosophy, how do you define being the underdog, and how do you tailor your strategy when representing clients without the deep resources of big firms or six trial attorneys, like you said?
It's a great question, and it's true. You know, yeah, but plaintiffs' attorneys like myself, I looked at, everyone has a list, as you can realize today, not getting involved in politics, but they know who they're dealing with. So the first time a case comes into play with an insurance company, they see who the attorney is on the other side, and they make their judgment. They say, well, this is an attorney that's going to go to trial if we can't settle. So they take us more seriously. They give us they offer settlements that are more apropos to the case in and of itself. And I've seen over the years, today, unfortunately, I mean, as we all know, Sal, there are too many lawyers. There are too many lawyers. Schools graduating too many lawyers, and the lawyers that work for themselves, real estate lawyers, because they can do closings, or lawyers who do wills and estates, or landlord. They try to take on an accident case. They won't even touch a medical malpractice because that's an area in and of itself. You really have to know what you're doing in med mal, because in the med mal arena, you're really up against two or three big firms that are very skilled and talented attorneys that know the medicine well because they're working hand and foot with their doctors. They have them at call, so it's a different kind of practice. If you're going to do med mal, you really have to know your medicine. But most of the other attorneys will engage or take on cases, personal injury cases, and not understand what a herniated disc is or a pre-existing condition. And they wind up taking less money than the case is worth, or even arguing a pre-existing injury to say it was exasperated, it was made worse. but you got to show it and you got to prove it and you have to talk about medical terminology and you have to make sure. The other thing, Sal, is important. You have to be on top of the case, and that's what makes one victorious and maximize the client's settlement. Now, you watch all these commercials about these big firms getting these big numbers, and they use actors and actresses to claim the awards that they receive. But it's quite um, opposite or sanctimonious because they're not on top of their cases. They're not on top of the medical. And this is the key. I'm on top of the medical treatment. I've got to make sure my clients are doing their treatment, uh, doing the testing. The testing is extremely important. If you're not able to do an MRI, a CAT scan, an EMG NCV, a brain SSEP test, there's all kinds of new brain testing. If you're not able to do, the medical treatment that the provider tells you to do, you're not going to get a recovery that is impressive or is justifiable. And a lot of these people that try to get into these cases and try to to work on them just don't understand the importance of picking the right medical facility who's going to assist us in obtaining the maximum settlement we can for our clients because they're going to do all the right tests. And more importantly, here's another example of something, if it went to the wrong attorney, they would have had a big problem. And a client of mine had he was involved, he was on an e-scooter. Today in New York City and a lot of the cities, everyone's driving an e-scooter, a bicycle, an electric bike, a motorized cycle. And so my client sustained a pretty bad injury. His head hit the windshield and went to the hospital, big hospital. I'm not going to name it, but they didn't do the right test. They didn't examine his brain, even though he was complaining. He had all the symptoms of a head injury. So from what he was saying to me, I was concerned. So I sent him to a facility with a trained neurologist who immediately got what I sensed was an issue with his brain and was concerned. And they rushed him by ambulance back to another hospital who diagnosed him with a slow brain bleed. Now, if this brain bleed continued, he was a very relatively young man in his early 20s. He could have died. He could have died. And that was a major mishandling or malpractice by a hospital and failing to do the appropriate testing here. Here, complaining of all the symptoms of a head injury, but they didn't do the testing. And thank God he came to me. I'm not going to say I saved his life, but I'm going to say I was involved with the doctor I referred him to in saving his life because we recognized there was some problem going on that wasn't detected at a trained hospital, a pretty big hospital. It was amazing. But thank God we were able to diagnose it in time because the consequences could have been severe, meaning death. So, getting the right attorney on the right case means a lot. And that's what I strive to do. I take an individualized approach, me, my assistant, and we work on the cases. We deal with the clients directly. And when I go to court, I'm usually the attorney who goes to court. It's not handed off to someone else like a valet ticket. Here, take it, give it, go get it, bring it back, like a lot of the firms do. We give that service that's needed, and we understand the cases. And again, that's why we're able to achieve great results and ultimately get the referrals back, the continuous referrals back, because people are happy with our services.
Yeah, you said many interesting things. I hear that a lot from personal injury attorneys that they don't go near medical malpractice.
Oh, yeah.
You alluded to the big box personal injury firms. They have clients coming to them and expecting, 6-7 digit checks, in a week's time. And you said it yourself that the other side knows who they're dealing with, and it's obvious. You've tried, you settled millions of dollars in personal injury actions, and you are in the spotlight. You've caught the attention of major media outlets. I know that I've seen you on Fox 5, Channel
Right.
7. You've been written up in the Daily News, Newsday, the New York Post. With that kind of spotlight, what is it like managing the pressure of high profile cases while still keeping your focus on the client sitting across from you? Do you find that the media attention helps or complicates the pursuit of justice?
It's a great question. It's a combination of both. The media perspective, they have their own spin on how they want to run a story, how it's going to be sensational, to catch the audience that's watching their medium, and it's understandable. So when they come into a case, if they want to cover a case, they're looking at it from a certain vantage point, what's going to make the most splash for their audience. For me, it's a combination of making sure a social issue is addressed, and of course making sure the client is protected and ultimately benefits from the media exposure. And again, the end result. One of my cases, I don't know if you got to look at it, was um, an immigrant from Albania. And, it's an American success story from Albania. She raised a bunch of kids. She was a cleaning woman in a hotel in Lower Manhattan during the migrant surge when they have all these illegals coming over the border. And the city maintains a contract and houses the illegals in a hotel. And she's cleaning the hotel, and she's ultimately assaulted by one of these migrants, illegal migrants. She's assaulted and punched and hit, and I'm representing her uh, for her injuries, and this gets major exposure. We get into the papers. The Fox, the Fox and Friends does an interview, but multiple channels. But the point was, here was a case where the general public was fascinated, to say the irony here of a legal a woman. She was crying to me how hard it was for her to obtain U.S. citizenship. It took many years and a very expensive cost. And she became one. And then she sees this woman come, these other people come, but this specific woman who assaulted her, beat her, took advantage of her, was 3 times her size. And it was again, we had pretty national recognition on the case, but that's a case where you get those cases sometimes that the media picks up and the public takes off with it and is fascinated, and that's a case that ultimately also helped us settle at a very good number because of the exposure. So in that particular case, the public exposure is a value driver, drove the value of the case even higher because we hit that kind of notoriety. And, and in that case, bringing the media in and having them focus on the case benefited us as well. So that's a good point in terms of what you're asking. It does have the effect, and there are other cases where it can have a negative effect. In criminal cases, I've represented people, and they'll come in and try to basically convict your client before your client has the ability to testify or for the evidence to be heard. So it's a mixed bag, but the attorney has to make that calculation. Is dealing with the media on a particular case going to help the client or not? And to me, it's only about the client. There are other attorneys out there, and you know them because you see them all on TV all the time, where it's just about them getting on TV, doing the interviews, getting into the papers. Then it's all about them. But when you see every so often or every blue moon a particular attorney, then that attorney is doing it for the benefit of their client. And that's what I try to do.
Yeah, I've seen those attorneys. I won't name them
Yeah,
by
I
name, but
can.
I know who you're talking about. And obviously, you've been around the block a few times. It's not something that you you have when you first become an attorney. And that's why I wanted to ask you, for someone that is stepping into a leadership role, whether lead counsel on a case, or guiding a small firm moving toward, or even moving toward the bench, what leadership lessons have you picked up that you can share with our audience?
Good question. I like to again, I like to be honest with my clients. I tell them what the potential outcomes are. I get people coming to me constantly, not only for an accident or a medical malpractice case, but a business case, a contract issue. And I review it and I say, listen, your odds are this and that. And I tell them that because I wouldn't want it to happen to me, Sal, being misled. So I think being the leadership qualities is being as honest as you can, being direct as you can, in informing them of the process. You have to tell them because they don't understand what the process is. They don't understand that if a case goes to trial in New York City right now, it takes an average of 3 to 5 years, if not more, depending on the county, to get to a trial. So it's important that they know that and understand that. But also being well versed in the law, having the experience, the right experience, not taking on a case you know nothing about the field. I won't take any copyright or patent law cases. I don't do immigration. I'm asked all the time about those subjects. I tell them, no, I don't do that, and I'm not going to get involved in it. But having the honesty and the integrity and the experience and the track record, the success makes the appropriate leadership skills. And I guess I have one more talent in the sense that not only do I understand medicine, I'm an administrative law judge, part-time for the city. And so I also look at it in the context of how would a judge decide this issue? How would a judge react to a particular motion, an application, or the case in general? Both sides, my side, the other side. And I think that helps my clients with that additional trait that I have, the ability to be a judge. That also helps in the overall compilation of a case and the success of a case. And that's important, another important
Yeah.
quality.
Yeah. Performing as an administrative law judge definitely gives you a different perspective as a lawyer, and obviously that insight that others don't have. And you're always on go. I can see that.
Well, we
You're
try.
always running. If I can ask, outside of the court and legal world, what passions, what interests help ground you? How do you recharge the batteries? How do you look so good after so long? How do you maintain your well-being?
I have good shoe polish, but yeah, my shoes look good. But no, I think it's having a good perspective on life, believing in God, believing in a higher authority, having a wonderful family, my wonderful wife and children. They keep me young. They keep me challenged. They keep me preoccupied. I don't have much spare time. I put a lot of time in between my office and then my family. So, you know, I don't have any particular chores. I do love to learn. I always love to learn. So when I do have the chance, I read and I listen to certain podcasts of programs that I'm going to learn something from. So that's what I do in my spare time.
Yes, sir. Looking ahead, what are you most excited about in the next phase of your career? Whether that means focusing more on the firm, more of a role in public service. I know that you have a passion with moving further into judicial service.
Yeah, I always had a passion to represent my fellow man, and I run for office, various offices. I was on the community school board. I did a lot of good things on the community school board. One of the things that gained national attention when I was on the school board, and I was a young kid, and I had no kids back then, and I wasn't even married. But I remember the issue when I was in public school about going into bathrooms and the toilet stalls. didn't have doors to close, and they originally they did, but they took them off because the kids would do horseplay, stuff to toilets and stuff. But how could you go to the bathroom? And in a lot of the public schools, the doors to the bathrooms were open too for the hallways, so that the teachers would pass and make sure there's nothing going on untoward in the bathroom. So you basically had no privacy if, God forbid, you had an emergency. So I said, you can't continue with that. And I made that an issue along with, basic stuff. We would have no paper towels, no soap. Just imagine. I mean, what were we teaching our kids, and what kind of diseases were we bringing upon them? And I wound up on the front page of Newsday back when they were a big paper on a Sunday, and I was on national public radio. But it was the bread and butter issues that are important, and I'd like to continue with that. Maybe serve as a higher judge down the road. But definitely, the business is going to change, Sal, as you know, with AI. It's changing already. Um, where you don't, remember we had to go to the library to learn stuff. You don't, you got everything on your phone now. Yeah, but what's not going to change is the trial component, where you need the attorney who knows how to try a case, and that's going to be years from now before AI has any say in getting involved in that. So
I'm really
it's going to be
glad that
very interesting
yeah,
in
it is
the
interesting, and I'm
next
really
7
glad
years.
that you brought that up because I've been reading many articles about attorneys implementing AI without success, getting themselves in trouble.
Yeah.
And you said it yourself. You've been practicing over 30 years. The legal landscape in New York has evolved considerably over your career. What are some of the biggest changes you've seen in how cases are handled, how clients approach the process, or even how courts operate?
It's a good thing. One of the biggest things is what we're doing right now, having video conferences. It didn't really exist until COVID, but now a lot of the courts allow these conferences. So it's a big, for us, it's a big deal in terms of commuting. I remember when I first started practicing, I was sometimes a chicken without a head. I had 3 or 4 court appearances on a day, going from different boroughs, the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan. It was amazing. And I look back to say, wow, I spent so much time traveling and rushing, where that's kind of calmed down, in that some of the courts now prefer this means that we're engaging in right now as a way to have hearings and discuss cases and conferences and even depositions. Another thing, depositions, you know what that, where you question a witness on the record, also known as an EBT. We would do that in person. We would go to an office, either the lawyer's office or a reporting company's office, and question the witness, whoever the witness was. That changed. It's now done the way we're doing it, video, where the witness can be anywhere in the world, and we can ask the witness questions with an interpreter and have the any exhibit, whether it's a picture or a diagram, shown on the computer and get it addressed. So um, technology has done an amazing thing. Um, it's helped me with my time. I don't have to run around as much as I did in the past, and it allows me to now deal directly with my clients' cases. Because if you're running around, there comes a point in time where you can't get to everything, and you then have to get another attorney in to do the case. Where I like to do everything myself, because this way I could tell my client what's going on with the case, and the client has more confidence in me, knowing that it was me and not a per diem. And that's another thing with these big firms, Sal. They send these per diems out, and they know nothing about they get a short blurb of what the case is, but they don't know the client. They don't know the problems with the case, the strengths of the case, or what's required of the attorney to bring the case up to a certain level so that the client can score a victory. And that's important. And this video technology that we have. The other thing is, the other change, Sal, is also interesting, was papers. If I had to, years ago, if I had to make a motion or file a summons, a complaint, or file a note of issue, an RJI to bring the case up to the trial stage, I had to go in person to the various courthouses, whether it's the cases in Queens, Bronx, Brooklyn. Today, I do that electronically. It's just amazing the amount of time that we're able to save.
Yeah, I find that
It's a big thing.
fascinating.
It's a great thing. It's a helpful, it's tremendously helpful for attorneys to have that ability, a time saving, and ultimately it benefits the client because I'm able to put more time in my client's case because I have more time. I'm not wasting my time running around filing things, motions, orders, injunctions, stuff of that nature. I could do it directly on a computer, and that's a great savings and benefit to not only the attorney but the client because they're saving that time saved is to their benefit. So that's an important um, distinction in terms of the future and how things are going to change. Um,
Yes, sir.
Other than that,
I find it.
we'll see what happens.
I find the whole subject fascinating, incorporating AI, the revolution of technology. Just on a personal, do you think that younger attorneys have a leg up because of this technological revolution that we're seeing?
Yeah, they do, but they also missed out, and I think for me it was a learning experience because it was back in the day when I first started practice, we would literally for statute of limitations we'd get a calendar, we'd have to count the days, the months, and the days. Today everything is punch it into the system and boom, it'll give you the date. It was the whole experience. Going to a conference with a room full of 300 attorneys. That was an experience that you don't see anymore. That doesn't happen anymore. Now you can do it online. There were things that were part of the package of a lawyer that aren't there anymore. And as you said, it's changed. The role of the lawyer has changed, and the function of the lawyer has changed, and the demographics and the armamentarium of the lawyer has changed because if you're tech savvy, that's great. You're going to do certain things very quickly, but you didn't experience the other stuff that was part of the fabric of the lawyer, which I was able to experience through the evolving process of the lawyer. It's been an evolving, and that's another great thing. Lawyers, particularly in personal injury, there's not much changes to the law. The tort law has been the same for many years. There's not much changes, but what's changed is the practice has evolved very quickly, very fast, and that's what makes it exciting as well. So
Yes, just a
another
quick
important
follow
point.
up.
Mhm.
A quick follow up for the younger lawyers that are listening in. What is one piece of advice that you'd offer them based on your decades of experience?
Well, good, excellent question, and it is communication. Um, these younger lawyers, I see with my kids, I mean, they're on their phones, texting, emailing. I went to a school meeting, one of my kids, and they had the students in the group. My son got into a National Honor Society. I was impressed. But all the kids in the audience weren't talking to each other, but they were communicating by text to each other. So,
Yeah, it's a
these
part of their
young kids
body.
now are trained, to everything, emails, texting. The communication is important, and they can't give up on that. That's something that technology is not going to assist them. You still have to have that communication with the client, sit down with the client, talk to the client, elicit things from the client. There's stuff because I see them and some of the people that don't have, some people are shy or don't have the wherewithal to ask the question, uh, are limited language, English language proficiency. I have to pick upon that and I'll ask them, I know you probably don't understand, or you probably have some other issue that you want to ask me. I get into it. I'm able to pull that out of them which I think these kids are not trained to do that, and because of the nature of how they were come into this world and how they've been educated through the technology.
And to go back to something that you said earlier, you always make yourself available to your clients. If someone wanted to contact you to represent them, what is the best way to reach you? Your phone number, your website?
Well, I give my office number, which is 718-278-3900, and I give them my cell, 347-680-8314. They have to have your cell because it's important. If they have a question, a concern, um, they're free to get to me. I may not pick up right away because I'm in a meeting, I'm driving, but I'll get back to them. But the communication is important in addition to the email. But yeah, I'm still old fashioned, and I think that helps me. They know that. And it's true. I picked up a case from another attorney. Client came to me, and the only way to communicate with this firm was through the internet and texting. If you called, you had AI, and that's the other thing. I call all day. I call insurance companies, law firms. AI is up there, right? When you call your credit card or your phone company, AI picks up. What can I do? You hear the machine, the robot. What can we do to help you? You calling for this? You calling for that? Tell us what you're calling for. Give us your name, your address, your date of birth. That's what you're dealing with. You're dealing now with AI technology. And you're not dealing with a regular person. And I think you know, everyone, whether it be the doctor or the lawyer or anyone else, you got to still have that personal connection. That's great and dandy. AI is tremendous at saving these big firms and companies uh, millions of dollars. They don't have to hire the receptionist, right? They don't have to hire the person to pick up the phone or reroute the calls. But if you want to help people, you got to be there. You got to, the live person has to be there, accessible, because in the case that I was given to, they got fed up with this AI system and they wanted someone who they could call and talk to on the phone. And I think that's important. It's very important. And that's the future. That won't change. That component of our future won't change.
Perfect. John, I have to say you are a true example of dedication to justice,
Well, thank you.
community,
We
public
try.
service.
Try.
You're
We can
very
only try.
welcome. I mean, from the courtroom to the streets of Queens, I mean, it's obvious that you're passionate. You have a commitment to helping others. And I really want to thank you for sharing your story and insights with us today.
Sal, the pleasure is mine. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Top Attorneys Podcast. The Top Attorneys celebrates the achievements of leading attorneys across the nation. To be featured, send a message or visit www.topattorneys.us.